Hello, peace and blessings, family. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Ivana Divine. I am a spiritual life coach, intuitive healer, and Reiki practitioner. And today I'm going to be just sharing with you how and why in the journey of me moving to Mexico, Riviera Maya, Quintana Roo, Mexico, during the global pandemic, right? Like, oh my God, the pandemic. Yeah, so how I moved to Mexico during the pandemic, with all the change, with all the things happening in the world. So initially, let's see, where do we begin? Initially, before I had ever been to Mexico, I put Mexico on my vision board back in 2016. And at the time, I just really wanted to travel. I didn't have I have specific destinations in mind, but like it was more so about travel. And I wanted to experience Mexico along with so many other places that I had never been before. So I'm originally from Baltimore City, Maryland in the US. And small city, and with that being a small city, with it being a small city, you know, I had a lot of small ways of thinking and perceiving the world just because I was really just impacted by my immediate environment. And so I knew that travel was something that I really wanted to do. And so fast forward, 4 years later, 2020, I was working at an ad agency. I was living in New York, living in Brooklyn, working at an ad agency. I have a digital marketing and advertising background, which a lot of people don't know about. But that's my 9-to-5 corporate matrix job background. Before I got into the healing arts, before really like stepping into this path. But I was working at an ad agency in 2020, still working my 9-to-5 job, but also growing Rise Queen, my wellness brand, and studying healing arts, just doing a lot of inner work on myself and learning from so many leaders, spiritual leaders around the world, and from around the world rather, even though I hadn't traveled there, of course YouTube and the internet, and how we have access to all these things. And so that was pretty much how I started learning. But anyway, 2020, I was working at an ad agency. I had some vacation time for work and I wanted to take a solo trip. So I said, okay, I want to go somewhere sunny. I want to go somewhere beautiful, tropical. I don't know where, but somewhere I had never been. And so 3 different people, it was a coworker, a friend, and maybe another friend, like 2 friends and a coworker had recommended Tulum, Mexico. And so if you've never been to Tulum is such a beautiful area. It's such a beautiful space here in Mexico. I don't currently live in Tulum, but I'm an hour away, and it's just a really beautiful place. So yes, you can look it up if you have never seen or been to Tulum. But anyway, so 3 people recommended that I visit Tulum. I'm very much a person who's about signs and synchronicities, and so I was just like, okay, well, I got these 3 signs to visit Tulum. Let me check out Tulum. I had never been. I looked it up, Googled it, and I loved the images I saw. I'm like, okay, beach, check, tropical, check, beautiful places, check. So I'm going to Tulum, Mexico. And when I got to Tulum, it just was like, woo! It was just so magical. I mean, I had traveled to beautiful places before. I would say maybe before then, like Thailand was probably like the most like other place where I could say it was really like on my wild list in terms of travel, like really was a beautiful place. But it was something about Tulum in terms of not just the aesthetics and how it looked, and the beach of course was beautiful, but it was the energy that I felt here. Like my soul just opened up in a way that like was really expansive for me at the moment. And it was just like what I needed that I didn't know I needed. Like my soul called that in. And I say that because I just felt so open and free and just like led, like spiritually led in such a way that I hadn't experienced before, whereas though I would just go and be like, you know, like the Airbnb was beautiful. I met so many dope people and other solo travelers. I had beautiful experiences just like laying out on the beach, and the food was really good. I rented a bike. I got to bike around. I just felt so free, you know, I felt so free. And travel does that for you in a way, right? Like travel expands us, it opens us up, it shifts our perspective. Our environment really has an impact on our energy, but like I could just feel the energy of being here that just felt so magical, and I felt like this little kid, and I just allowed myself to explore and play, and I really needed that at the time. And so granted, this was 2020 before COVID. This was in like February maybe. I remember when I being at work, and me and my coworkers were actually like watch some of the CNN reports and the news when COVID was just starting to break out in China. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's so unfortunate that that's happening over there. And it was kind of like this, like, oh wow, look what's happening over there and not happening over here kind of a thing, right? Like we sometimes, not we, let me speak for myself, you know, absorbing or observing when it's observing other things happening in the world, you know, it's easy to kind of watch it from the outskirts when it's not right in your backyard. And so, you know, although I felt for what was happening in China and in Wuhan and the citizens and the people there, it was just like this, I was removed from it, right? Like COVID hadn't spread globally just yet. And so so traveling wasn't a problem at the time. It was still kind of like, I don't like to say the word normal, but it was pre-COVID. I met so many beautiful people, had some great experiences. I met a guy who was the owner of this like little cafe, and he actually took me to a cenote, and that was my first experience at a cenote. And I got to just spend the whole day in this like private cenote, which was really open to the public, but because he knew the people and we went like on a Sunday, it wasn't a lot of tourists there, and so we got to really just kind of like explore the whole cenote, and it was beautiful, and we ate fruit and we sang songs, and it just was just like this amazing experience in the jungle. I also while I was here, really just got to spend time in nature, and I did my first Temazcal, which is a indigenous practice that is about reconnecting you to your mother's womb, and going into a lodge that's really dark, and it's warm in there, really, or hot rather. It's really dark. It gets really hot. And it opens you up. It opens you up on the physical level and spiritually for you to reconnect to your womb, reconnect to that darkness, and almost like a rebirthing of yourself. So it's a spiritual ceremony that's done, and we did that with some cacao, and that was my first experience with cacao, which is a natural herb that's used here often in Mexico by the Mayan culture. By the Mayans for ceremony, for grounding, for healing, so many different uses of cacao. And so, yeah, I had just an amazing experience in Tulum. And so I remember the day before that I was due back, I got an email from my job saying we weren't going to be returning back to work. We were on work from home orders, and that we were going to be working from home until further notice. And I remember thinking like, damn, I wish I had my laptop, because I would have stayed. And even before that, while I was there, like I was spending so much time on the beach, and I just was thinking like, wow, I really wish this was my life. Like I really wish that I could just experience this more often and not like once a year. And so I ended up flying back to New York and working from home, but I just felt so charged up from the trip. And so, as I mentioned before, I was serving clients and creating content online and serving my community and online in a digital way, in terms of motivational content and things like that. And so I felt that, and I've just always been a very optimistic person, but I felt like since being in Tulum right before COVID hit the US really hard, I was able to really be charged up in a way that I could hold more space for a lot of people who were going through hard times, right? And my spirit was just energized in such a way that I felt like I could pray for people. I could really hold space in terms of conversation with people, and really just kind of be there to like nurture the people around me, my family, my friends, my online. It really was coming from this place of just like being energized when so many people, I was observing so many people around me feeling drained and frustrated and scared and in fear with the unknown. You know, things are shutting down, but I was just like in a blissful place. Like I was just like riding this wave. I'm like, it's okay, you know, like things are shutting down, but it kind of just didn't really impact me. I was able to really feel this sense of peace, and I felt this and had this experience before, right? When things around me were chaotic or crazy, and people was like spazzing out, and I've been able to maintain peace. But this time it felt like a deeper sense of peace. Like I can't even explain in words just the level of energy that I was kind of like engulfed in. And so with that, you know, I put it to work. But I realized though that as months went on, I was like, I don't know when we're going back to work. I don't even know. But all I know is I loved my experience in Tulum. Like I really do. And those thoughts of like, I wish this was my life. Like, how can I make that more permanent? How can I make that more of a reality, of a possibility, right? Like I just started getting all these thoughts and ideas and downloads about like, well, what would it look like to stay over there longer than a week, you know, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 months. And so, yeah, so I just started doing some research online, and I found people who lived abroad, who lived in other parts of the world, and I hadn't really entertained the idea as much. Like it crossed my mind very briefly before about living outside of the US, but it was kind of like a far off thought, you know. It was kind of like, maybe, that would be nice one day, but it wasn't something I really felt like I could make a reality until I visited Tulum and then came back with the pandemic. So that was really like the catalyst to really push me into thinking about how could I make this a possibility. And so as I was doing research online, I came across this one YouTuber. Her name is Talia. I can't remember what her YouTube name is. Maybe I'll like drop it below or link to the video, the specific video I'm talking about. But what was important to me is that she was a Black woman, you know, and she was living in Mexico, and she was doing an interview. It was another Black woman. She was interviewing about their experience living in Mexico. And so I was like, okay, like it's like a Black person has done it, you know, like hearing that perspective, it made me again it felt more close to home. It felt more real for me. And so I loved the video, and I was like, let me find this girl on Instagram. So I found her on Instagram, started following her, and I just like loved her content, and we seemed to be on the same vibe. Like her content was similar to mine in terms of being like motivating, encouraging, really speaking to women, speaking to empowerment and you know, spirituality. And it just was such an alignment with kind of like where my life was and where my life was going, where I saw my life going. So yeah, so I reached out to her. Like something just was like, reach out to her. So I reached out to her to just ask her more questions, and we ended up connecting and having like this whole conversation in DMs, and she was telling me about her experience. And I think at the time she may have been in the US, but she had lived in Mexico for like over a year. And yeah, I got to ask more questions, and that was super helpful for me. And what else? And yeah, she also told me about a couple of Facebook groups that I could join, and gave me some contacts. So that was so helpful. And then like from that, it just was like a domino effect of how things started lining up for me. So somehow I found like this Instagram this Instagram account, well, somehow I got connected. Not somehow, we know these things are divine. We know how the universe works and how spirit works. But I was connected to this Instagram, this other woman on Instagram who was talking about living abroad, Black people living abroad. Then she was posting her friend who they were like business partners, and they were always talking about like moving abroad, like Black people living outside the US, living, Black people living abroad. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, like I was following them, absorbing up their content, and I was like, yes, like this. And then they were having a webinar specifically for Black people wanting to move to Mexico during the pandemic. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is the sign. Like, if you ever needed a sign, like, this is the sign, right? Like, it was that energy. I definitely needed that sign because that webinar, I was like, oh my God, this is so on point, because I was doing research and trying to piece things together, and I was like, okay, it's coming together. But attending that webinar, it was hosted by a panel of at least like 5 or 6 Black women who lived in different parts of Mexico. And they share so many gems. Like, they talk about things I didn't even think about, like health insurance or like travel insurance, having a power of attorney, just some of the laws and the government, how the government was responding to COVID, what the laws were, what some of the protocols and the procedures were, things like that, like things that were super, super, super helpful, navigating the language, the language difference and things like that. And so the cost of living, right? And so all of that was so valuable, and just really was just like, so impactful for where I was in the research and just the decision, and really just the plan that I was putting together to make this thing happen. And so at some point, I don't remember if this was pre or post webinar, I just remember praying like, God, like I think it was pre-webinar. I don't think I found out about this webinar until after the fact. But as the thought was sinking in, and then I was doing YouTube, I prayed about it. I remember saying, God, like, this is what I desire. I really want to go and spend an extended amount of time in Mexico, maybe 2 months, 3 months. I just want to be there for longer. So like, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this is what I desire. And I remember fervently praying that. And y'all, I'm a prayer warrior. Like, I pray about mine. I pray about everything in my life. I pray over everything, about everything. And that's how we manifest. We manifest by being in communication with spirit, by being in communication with God, by actually feeling the emotions and putting that energy, our energy, emotions behind the things that we want, that we visualize for ourselves and for our lives. And that's how I've gotten everywhere else in my life. And so it was a no-brainer, when I prayed and I released it to God, like, but it was also prayer and an element of surrender. I just kind of let it go. I let go of the how, like I was still doing my research and piecing it together, but I didn't know exactly what the how would look like, and I didn't let the how stop me from allowing things to just fall into line, and they did. And so I got connected with one Instagram, connected with another, and then the webinar. And then the Facebook group I ended up finding, which was also just like, that was like the icing on the cake. The Black Expats in Mexico Facebook group was really the icing on the cake, to see other people who were either living here already, or were interested in moving here or staying here for longer periods of time. That really felt like, wow, like there's community, there's other people doing this. So that gave me more encouragement and motivation. And so I put an ad out. I was living in Brooklyn again at the time, and I put out a couple of ads and Craigslist and things like that for a subleaser. So I told my roommate, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I'm working towards. And at the time, I don't even know if she believed me. She was like, oh, okay, that's nice. But I'm just like, that I want to be subleasing my room because, I wanted to stay for at least 3 months, and then figure out the rest. Like, I just planned on coming back, honestly, but going to stay and live there for 3 months while we're still on the work from home orders and all of that. And it was it was, yeah, it just was like how things started to unfold. I started getting inquiries of people who wanted to sublease for 3 months for shorter periods of time in Brooklyn. And you know, it was a point along the way where I felt a little bit nervous because I was thinking about the pandemic and like if somebody wanted to stay for only 3 months or whatever. But I'm just like, this is New York. Again, I put it out to God and I just release it. And so yeah, and I shared that because, you know, for me, like, even though I pray I release, like, there's still sometimes those little moments that try to creep in to distract us, to plant seeds of doubt into our vision, into our goals and what it is that we want. But you can't let that stop you or to defeat you. You know, it's not that the doubt or the fear or the uncertainty won't exist. It's how you move through it. And so with that, I kept posting because I went through interviews and all of them weren't a good fit, or for one reason or another it didn't work out. And I just was like, you know, and that was a whole nother layer of surrender along the way of like, okay, well, I don't want just anybody in my apartment. I don't want just anybody in my space. I want somebody who I can feel comfortable with leaving my apartment to, or half of my apartment to, for 3 months. So, you know, so I had to vet people and interview a lot of people. And then finally just found a really great fit, and she wanted to stay for 3 months. She paid a month up front, I think 2 months up front. And yeah, so we signed an agreement and I packed up my stuff and I was off to Mexico. And I moved to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And so that's another piece of it. So I chose Playa del Carmen specifically because that's where it seemed like the most community was, and that was important for me as I was online and as I was really just kind of like observing the group and seeing, you know, people in and out of these groups. I was like, okay, it seems like a lot of them are in Playa del Carmen, so like let me go there. Like that's where I would feel the most comfortable and safe. And Playa del Carmen, I hadn't even been here before. Like I said, I visited Tulum and I knew that it was only an hour from Tulum. So I'm like, okay, well, if I hate it in Playa del Carmen, I'll just go to Tulum, since I really, you know, I love Tulum. But I wanted to give Playa del Carmen a try since I had never been here. And so finding an apartment, I found an apartment on using Facebook, and so that's what a few people had recommended. So Facebook Marketplace was like where I went to for searching apartments and in my price range, and I had to do the price conversion with pesos in the US dollar and get an idea of how much I wanted to pay. But one thing I knew from a lot of people, they said the cost of living here was cheaper, and so that was a huge plus for me. I'm like, yes, I get to save a coin, I get to save some money, because I still technically had bills, you know, in my New York apartment in Brooklyn. My rent was covered, but I still had other bills and, you know, and other obligations and things like that. So I wanted to keep my costs low and still be able to enjoy and experience living here. And so yeah, so 3 months. So I moved in September. So this is my 1 year Mexiversary. Depending on what time or when you're watching this video, it's been a year since I've been here, and I'm just doing this video because, y'all, when I first got here, I wasn't really trying to do the whole vlogging thing. Like, I was here to be here, to experience being here. And then so much more came from that, like so much more came from that, which I'll share in another video. But I really just wanted to create this video to just kind of share my experience and my story about how I got here. And like I said, it's been a year. That 3 months turned into that 3 months turned into 6 months, then turned into a year. And so if you didn't already know, I love it here. I love living in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. The culture, the food, the beach, the water, the energy, really the energy, the Mayan culture, because Quintana Roo, Riviera Maya is Mayan land. And just even through the pandemic, how I felt so held here, how I felt so safe. and so nurtured being here. It's a lot of feminine energy, divine feminine energy here, and this place has really called me in, has really pulled me in, and it's just been a cosmic portal being here of so many birthings and renewals and transformation and healing and experiences and fun and exploration. And so I really love and enjoy being here. I see myself being here indefinitely, maybe not in Playa del Carmen, but maybe some other parts of Mexico. So those are things that I'm exploring. But I just really wanted to make this video to share with you all, and to really just encourage anybody who's thinking about moving abroad or staying abroad for an extended period of time. I say absolutely do it, absolutely go for it. You will not regret it, because it isn't an experience in and of itself. The experience that is a teacher that is here to evolve us, to transform us, to expand us, for us to really just connect with another layer and parts of ourselves, our spiritual selves, our emotional, mental, physical, our whole entire self. Travel really opens you up in such a beautiful way, especially when you can really immerse yourself in a place and get planted and really learn from other cultures, and being on another part of the land, especially if you're coming from the US, or just anywhere where you've spent your whole life. Environment has so much to do with our mental and our mind, and so changing your environment really is how you shift and expand yourself. And so I just encourage anybody who's interested, who wants to move to Mexico specifically, or who wants to just travel and live elsewhere. I definitely encourage you, if you want to DM me, if you want to message me, any questions, all of my information will be below. And yeah, I'm going to definitely do a part 2 to share more about my experience being here for a whole year, some of the things I've experienced, some lessons, some do's, some don'ts, and all that good juiciness. But this is just part 1, and so I'll be sharing the other video really soon, so stay tuned for that. And I'm just sending you all much love, much light and joy, and wherever you are, whatever it is that you are doing. So love you. Mwah. Peace, love, and light. Bye for now. Community, co-workers, just kind of be that beam of light, because I was so charged up from the trip and from the experiences that I had